This video is produced with the purpose of serving those who have listened to teachings and engaged in practice, as a guide and reference for practicing the Four Noble Truths. Compared to live teachings, it is more concise and has fewer illustrative examples, making it potentially challenging for first-time listeners. This video contains many Buddhist philosophical terms, which is another difficulty for listeners. Therefore, even for those familiar with Buddhist terminology, it is essential to skillfully observe these words with wisdom. Language is a means of communication, used to imply objects or phenomena, also known as dharma. Each word can imply one or several different dharma. To understand the object or phenomenon that a word indicates, one must observe the context in which that word is used. There can be many different, even opposing interpretations of a single Buddhist term, so in this video, Buddhist terms must be understood in the context of this video. Chapter 1. Exploring perception or sana in the five aggregates. In Buddhist studies, perception is a concept that carries multiple meanings and diverse interpretations, sometimes even seeming contradictory. However, within the scope of this chapter, perception is discussed from the perspective of a psychological process, from contact to feeling to perception, aiming to describe the process of the mind's direct reception and reaction to the external world. This process occurs through 6 gates of cognition, or the 6 bases, which include eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, corresponding to the 6 realms or objects of the senses. This cognitive process, often referred to as sensory perception in philosophy and psychology, is particularly emphasized and explored under the name perception in the context of Buddhism. Chapter 2. The Nuances of Mindfulness in Buddhism. Mindfulness is a complex Buddhist term with diverse applications and understandings. In the context presented here, mindfulness is understood as a part of the psychological process, from contact to feeling, then perception, followed by mindfulness, or recollection, reflective thinking, and finally, conscious awareness. Within this framework, mindfulness plays 2 crucial roles, first as a form of recollection, and second as a mechanism for activating information from the storage, creating a foundation for the initiation of thought. In this case, mindfulness is not directly equivalent to cognition, but is the content evoked in memory, which is then noticed and recognized by the conscious mind. This illustrates the sophistication and complexity of mindfulness in constructing and maintaining the network of thought and awareness in Buddhism, highlighting how mindfulness connects direct experience with the development of refined consciousness. Chapter 3. The Concept of Wisdom. Wisdom is a word used both in Buddhist teachings and in everyday life, often leaning towards the meaning of knowing much, understanding broadly. But the term wisdom, as used in the context of the Nikaya scriptures and in this book, refers specifically to the understanding of truth as it is. Understanding the truth as it is, called wisdom or insight, is achieved at 3 levels: Sutta-Mayipana, which is wisdom gained through listening to teachings and chanting scriptures; Cinta-Mayipana, which is wisdom through thinking; and Bhavana-Mayipana, which is wisdom through practice. No matter how broadly one knows or understands, if it remains a dualistic conscious knowledge, it is not considered wisdom, not insight, but ignorance. Chapter 4. The Principle of Dependent Origination. In the truth of dependent origination, there clearly does not exist a purely spiritual world conceptualized as a creator, a great self, an almighty God, an everlasting true mind, from which all things and phenomena arise. This entirely negates the viewpoint of idealist philosophy that the spirit precedes and matter follows. However, the truth of dependent origination also clearly shows sense bases, sense objects are the material world interacting to give rise to the spiritual world. Could the truth of dependent origination align with the viewpoint of materialist philosophy, that matter precedes and spirit follows? The truth of dependent origination, relying on the reality occurring in the present, observing things and phenomena happening now, not only denies the perspective of idealist philosophy, but also denies the perspective of materialist philosophy. Materialist philosophy posits that a category of matter or a purely material world exists beforehand. However, that is not the case. There is no thing, no phenomenon that is purely material. The category of the mind or nomenclature, which is a Buddhist term indicating the mental category, not only includes actions belonging to the category of consciousness, but also encompasses stored information. Anything or phenomenon conceptualized as material always contains some amount of information within it. This amount of information belongs to the mental category or nomenclature. For example, a page of text is material, is form, but the content of this text is mental, belongs to nomenclature. A magnetic tape, a DVD, a memory card contains both material parts, which is form, and information stored within it that is mental, which is nomenclature. Types of electromagnetic waves, light waves transmitting information, are material but carry information within them, which is mental, is nomenclature. Any material thing or phenomenon always carries some amount of information within it. A house, a table, a diamond, an electron, a photon, and so on all contain some information. Studying a thing or phenomenon means exploring the information stored within it. With inorganic materials, there is some information, but with organic materials, living cells contain additional information stored in DNA. This information stored in DNA is one of the factors giving rise to consciousness. Depending on different types of plants and animals, the amount of information in DNA will vary, leading to the emergence of consciousness with different styles and degrees. Sense bases and sense objects. Interacting to give rise to actions belonging to the category of consciousness does not equate to the materialist viewpoint because sense bases. Sense objects are not purely material but also contain stored information. The information contained in the DNA of nerve cells is one of the factors giving rise to consciousness and other actions belonging to consciousness. The consciousness of rebirth, mentioned in the appendix, is considered as rebirth linking name and form. Form here is the subtle material part retaining information about the mind of the deceased, not an inorganic material like photons or basic particles, but arises due to DNA mutations in brain nerve cells. Therefore, this subtle material part carries some characteristics of brain cell material, so when it interacts with the information about the mind, the knowledge of rebirth arises. Chapter 5, Toward Enlightenment. In the present era, science has made significant advancements, but it's crucial to realize that scientific discoveries are only approximate truths, not absolute, due to the dual nature of consciousness based on superficial and simplified observations of the world. A typical example is the transformation from light energy to thermal energy under conventional observation, which assumes that this energy remains intact in light. However, the reality is not so simple. Thermal energy is only generated when light interacts with an object, and no energy conversion occurs in a vacuum. A profound understanding of reality as the contact and interaction between elements leading to their cessation and arising helps eliminate conventional viewpoints and move towards the truth of impermanence and non-self. In this video, we approach fresh discoveries in philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, and biology based on the principle of dependent origination. Although these perceptions vary in detail and breadth, the goal is not to observe them in the deepest sense, but to help learners overcome obstacles like self-view, doubt, and clinging to rites and rituals, moving towards enlightenment. The Noble Eightfold Path, introduced as the supramundane right path, is a spiritual journey leading to liberation, whether for a learner, known as Savaka, or for one in right concentration. This is described in the middle-length discourses as taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path. The mundane eightfold path means practicing in the worldly realm but with a transcendent purpose, helping learners find the correct spiritual path, free from delusion. Among the three types of wisdom, learning wisdom, thinking wisdom, and meditative wisdom, only meditative wisdom through observation and practice truly leads to the supramundane right path, where true wisdom and understanding of impermanence and non-self are revealed. This journey is not only about learning but also about practicing to achieve liberation from suffering. Merely stopping at theoretical learning without practicing meditation, one cannot escape the cycle of the wrong paths and the mistaken perceptions about oneself, such as self-view, possession view, conceit, which still leads to comparisons, judgments, and the characteristics of an ordinary mind.